right, guys, we will get started here in just a minute. I think I included it in the email, but just in case, make sure you have all the props today. We're going to focus in on the hips and hamstrings, and so sometimes we need more props for that than others. So grab a couple blocks or a couple rolled towels. That would give you something nice and short and squat. I find that the towels roll a little bit more sturdily, and so they resemble the yoga block. I've also got a strap. Anything that you can use as a strap, a necktie. You could also use a towel for that, kind of folding it longwise so that you can lasso a foot, let's say. I've got a towel, mostly because I only grabbed one blanket, so I'll kind of use a towel as a blanket. And then I have a bolster. A thick couch cushion would be similar in sturdiness, or a couple of pillows. Just so that you have everything you might need. You may not choose to use all the props I offer or suggest as we go through practice. It's good to have them handy so you don't have to get up and move around. So to start class today, we're actually going to start reclined on our backs. I've got my mat turned sideways today. Normally I face you with the short edge of my mat, but this should help you see some of the different shapes that we'll take and placement of the props, I think, a little bit better. So as you find your comfy spot on your back, you're welcome to add some props, creating some extra cushion with a blanket, maybe using a blanket as a neck roll, anything that makes reclining on your back more comfortable. I will offer the opportunity for a supported reclined goddess to start class today, since we're kind of honing in on those hips, using your blocks or your rolled towels. When you lay on your back, those blocks will come underneath the thigh or the knee. That just helps you keep from opening too wide to start. And you might want to have your strap relatively near so that you can grab it without having to do a lot of moving once you've gotten the fun. So as you arrive in that resting posture on your back, find that place where you can lay comfortably with as little tension through the body as possible. Feeling free to use the props or not. Maybe you start in what would be our Shavasana position. Another great option if you've got any low back tension is to place your feet on the mat, keeping the knees in line with the hip, or letting the knees knock in. Finding and arriving on your mat so that you can explore how your body feels today. As you settle, maybe you choose to rest your hands, one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, two hands on your belly, or maybe those hands simply rest palms up by your side. Taking the first few breaths of practice to simply arrive and settle in. And as you get settled, maybe you begin to look inward, taking note of how the body feels today, paying particular attention to the status of the hips and hamstrings. Sort of taking inventory of those spaces, noting what feels tight, comfortable, or loose. feeling free to set an intention for your practice. Perhaps it's one of release, or perhaps embracing that sense of vulnerability. Often when we target our hips in particular, that might release tensions or anxieties you've been holding there. You might notice they could be feeling tighter than they normally do. Maybe you choose to settle on an intention of calmness or serenity, acknowledging how postures affect your body as you settle into them today. Placing one hand over the heart and one hand over the belly if you've not already done so. And allow all of the breath to exhale out. Your next inhale, expand to the front side of the body, filling up the belly, filling up the lungs, feeling the hands move. And then exhale, surrenders to the mat. Inhale, deeply expanding through the front side of the body. Maybe you even hold it at the top. And then exhale, sigh it out. One more deep, expansive breath here. And then exhale, let it go. Allowing that breath to find its pace, airing towards your natural breath pattern, not forcing or focusing on the breath, but simply allowing it to support your postures as you settle in for longer holds in each posture than we do in our regular flow classes or classes that move a lot more. And as you're ready, if you've got your knees opened out, go ahead and guide the knees together. Feel free to use the hands, scoot your blocks out of the way. And then eventually we'll make our way to that knee hug. And just gently swaying the hips from side to side. Checking in with the low back here. Feeling free to even take some gentle knee circles a couple times in each direction. And then when you feel those revolutions even out, you might hug the knees tightly for a couple of breaths, honoring and acknowledging how compression feels in the body. You will let the feet plant on the mat, reaching for that strap. And no need to use the hooks if you happen to have a yoga strap. I'm just gonna kind of lasso from the middle of my strap. I'm gonna start with the left foot, pressing the ball or arch of the foot into the strap, and then making some decisions about the other leg. Maybe that knee stays fit to the ceiling. Maybe you stretch that leg out long. Starting here a little bit active, you can rest your biceps on the mat, bending at the elbows and holding onto your strap with your hands. Depending on the length of your strap, you could wrap it around your hands so that you're not using a lot of grip strength to hold your strap. As we settle here, simply press the foot into the strap and pull gently down on that strap. Noticing sensation on the back side of the leg. That leg should be hovering directly over your hip. So we're not pulling the toe to our nose. You might honor a gentle bend to the knee. That micro bend could release tension in the hamstring and also provide relief for the low spine. Holding here a little bit active through that leg, keeping some engagement throughout this process on each side, protecting the joints. If we have a fish foot, it's very easy to accidentally put pressure on the ankle or knee. And then you might release a little bit of pressure. My strap's not quite long enough to wrap it around my hand, so that option. And you're going to just start to let your foot lower about a quarter of the way. Still pressing the foot into the strap, feeling your hips staying square. And gently pull it hip height, or maybe it crosses the line a little closer to your nose. Taking this movement with your breath for about 4 rounds. You might exhale the heel a quarter of the way down and inhale it towards your nose. I've got 3 more. Seeing if you can use the strap instead of the hip flexor, relaxing through the top of the quad, really letting that foot lean into the strap. I've stopped counting, so I'm going to do 1 more. And then eventually we'll all pause that neutral leg right on top of the hip. Then we'll switch the grip of the strap, taking the strap into the left hand. Or if you're doing your right leg first, simply make sure the strap is in the same arm as extended leg. Taking your opposite hand and just resting it gently on the opposite hip. You're going to start letting the leg open out to the side. And then when it hits its version of depth, you're going to pull it back up with the strap. Taking that motion 2 or 3 more times. Again, you can sync it with your breath. And after your 3rd round, we'll let that leg drop out to the side. Here I've got my elbow on the floor and I'm holding the strap. It's a little bit of effort for my hand, but it helps me keep from overstretching. Noticing how the hamstrings feel here, the inner thigh, as well as the hip. Noticing if your body really wants to roll over to that leg, popping up the opposite hip. Pausing, taking a few more rounds of breath as your leg feels heavy in the strap. Easy to accidentally engage through the leg instead of release into the crotch. Your next inhale, lift that leg, pulling with the strap. We're going to switch grips here, taking the strap into the opposite hand. Maybe the left hand reaches out to the side, T-shape. We're going to let that leg drop to the opposite side. Finding a little bit of a spinal twist here, really feeling the outside of the left hip. You can keep the foot floating with the strap, depending on how your spinal twist feels. You could let that foot drop to the floor. But when I do that, especially early in my practice, my opposite shoulder pops up. So I'm keeping my foot about the length of my forearm off the mat. I've got my knee or my elbow bent again. I'm just letting my leg stretch gently. The weight of the leg is in strap. Gravity's doing a little bit of work here. Your next inhale pulls that leg center. You can release the strap and lower the leg to the mat. If your opposite leg is not extended out, go ahead and extend it out. And just notice the difference between one side and the other before we switch sides. In my mind, we will revisit this stretch at the end of our practice after we do some more hips and hamstrings. Of course, that is completely dependent on time. But it's a nice way to kind of get a gauge of how our hips and hamstrings feel. So switching sides, making the decision to stretch or bend your left leg this time, and then settling in. We started with a little bit of a hold, nice and square, leg floating above the hip. Big toes are flexing toward your face. The foot pushes into the strap as you put a little bit of pressure pulling the strap down. Feel this down the back of my leg, but I also feel it a little bit on my internal and external rotators because the action of pulling down and pushing into the strap helps lock my hip into some squareness that it most likely doesn't regularly feel. Pushing into that strap will start that slight movement here. You might release your strap a bit. You might bring the hands a little higher as you lower the leg about a quarter of the way. And then pull it back center or a little bit closer to the nose. Really instigating movement with the strap. It's easy for the hip flexor to take over. It's still engaging a little. But you actually want your arms to do the work here. You've probably got 3-ish more. Maybe it gets closer to your nose. Maybe not. Once you finish your final round, let that leg return over hip. We start tic-tacking it in and out to external rotation. So I've got my left arm reaching out long or on my left hip. And I gently let the leg open, using the strap as much as possible, and then lift it back up. Range of motion here doesn't have to be very deep. You could go half or a quarter of the way. Just getting the leg ready to settle into that hold. I think we did about 2 or 3 rounds on the first side. So once you've finished that, you can settle into the hold. We're not trying to pull our toe to our ear here. It's very much hip height. And you can choose to keep your elbow on the floor, kind of creating a basket almost out of your strap for the foot to weigh heavily into. Checking in with your breath. Noticing if the stretch feels intense, how that might change your breath pattern ever so slightly, or it could change it a lot. Then, as you're ready, pulling that leg up with the strap, swapping hands so that you can take that strap and leg across the body. My foot is still pretty active in my strap. That helps me feel some really great stretching on my external rotator and all the way down my IT band. Your next inhale, bring that leg up, releasing the foot, the leg lowered, letting both legs extend once more, maybe noticing that they feel a little more similar. And then you can hug your knees to the chest and gently rock yourself up to a seat or roll to one side and press up through your top hand. As we set up for our first seated posture, no rush, feel free to wiggle it out or shake it out as you need. Starting here with a little bit of hamstring work. And then we'll kind of just alternate hamstrings and hips throughout this seated series. Listening to the body, not forcing depth of stretch. So taking your stack of pillows or your bolster, depending on how you sit on your pelvis, you might also want to fold a blanket and sit sort of like halfway on it, because that will help tilt your pelvis a little slightly forward. Often when we do seated forward stretches, we tilt backwards on our pelvis. So that's often where a little bit of low back strain comes from. And so that blanket underneath your hips, even if you have pretty good hamstring flexibility, sometimes it feels nice to feel just a slight elevation of the hips, which gives you sort of this downward slope. And so that helps you get on top of those hip bones. So we'll pull the bolster, your leg, the bolster, let's start with the left leg. The bolster is going to go directly in front of your left hip so that your right leg stays straight in front of your right hip. And then your left leg comes on top of that bolster. You can pull the bolster in farther, you can scoot it away. I do suggest protecting the knee, so I wouldn't put it so far that you have sort of this suspension bridge happening with the back of your knee. That sometimes puts, especially if you have hyperextension, unnecessary pressure on the knee. So I would say let it be supported in some way. We're going to inhale and reach up, and exhale, hinge forward. Arms can rest on your bolster. You could grab some extra props. If you're feeling it, you could reach for your foot. But remembering, we're not working past about effort level of 4 in our restorative class. Just holding and noticing. You could even rest the other arm on the mat beside the leg that's on the mat. You feel rounding through the upper back, while the lower back is still pretty straight. You can remind yourself that of maybe thinking breath with movement. Inhales lengthen through the spine. The exhale might fold. We've got about 4 more rounds of breath here. So use that breath as works best for your body. And you can gently stack your spine. You might need to scoot your bolster a bit. We're going to bend that knee, sort of like we're crossing the ankle over the quad of the right leg. But your leg is nice and supported by your prop. I got to put something underneath my ankle, putting a lot of pressure on my quad. So you're in sort of a seated figure 4. And maybe this is enough. Maybe sitting upright, you're feeling some stuff on the external rotators here. You're probably still feeling a little bit of hamstring on the extended leg. Do try to flex through your toes on each foot. That protects through your joints. But if you want, you could gently walk a little bit forward. In that half figure 4. You might feel some space in your low back as well. Because as we create space in our hips and our hamstrings, we often find some release for low back tension. Got about 3 or 4 more rounds of breath. Maybe noticing where that breath goes as we hinge forward. Harder to take a deep belly breath. So you probably feel the space expanding on the sides of your rib cage and through your back. And as you're ready, you can walk yourself back up. Maybe gently sway the shoulders from side to side. And then we'll start to extend that leg, maybe bend the knee to the ceiling, plant it on the foot on the floor, stretch it out long, maybe give the quad a shake as we switch sides. So this time setting up to support the right leg with your bolster. So your left leg, you want it to stick straight out from your hip so we're not going at an angle out. That means the bolster kind of scoots to one edge. And then your right leg comes on top. Checking in with those sits bones, really thinking about reversing that tuck and tilt back. And we'll start to reach our arms up on your next inhale and hinge up and toward that foot. Letting the arms rest where it's comfortable. And ideally flexing through your feet. But for this one, you could also let them kind of relax to their natural state so that you're really just settling in with minimal effort. You can always take that option of lengthening through the spine with the inhale and surrendering into the fold on your exhale. We've got about 4 more rounds of breath. You can gently walk yourself up. situating for the hip opener here, readjusting as needed. As you get that foot across the quad, and that leg is supported by your bolster. Again, I don't love the way that feels on the quad. I'm going to cushion the towel. And again, it may be different from one side to the other. The first side, maybe you hinge forward. Maybe this side is less interested in that, and that's okay. Just kind of feel out where you would like to settle. Again, still reaching up and out of that, of the pelvis and the lower back so that you don't sink backwards. This version is a nice option or modification for fire log, where we do 90-90, crisscrossing both shins and stacking them on top, where you've got right angles at your knees and parallel lines at your shins. This one sometimes makes it a little less intense. And about 3 more rounds of breath. You can gently stack it up. Oops. The bolster so you can plant, slide. Again, maybe a gentle twist of the body. Option also to take your hands behind you, plant the feet on the floor, take some windshield wipers with the knee. And finding a comfortable seat, whatever that looks like for you. We'll take a few seated cat cows, kind of reversing that hinge forward as you inhale, chest opens to the ceiling. Exhale, come round to the front cat. Just moving through that upper back for a couple of rounds. And as you're ready, we'll pause in stillness in that neutral spine with the shoulders stacked over hips. And set up for our next posture. Getting into the hip flexors a little bit here with some bound angle, your butterfly pose. Often when I offer this posture throughout class, I talk about the options of heels farther away or heel closer. If you would like to find more release for your low back, feel free to make your diamond bigger. But we are focusing on our hips here. So maybe you work on bringing the hips closer or the heels closer to the heels. And again, maybe just staying upright here is plenty. Depending on how it feels, you could support under the knees or thighs with a block or your rolled towel or the pillows, depending on what you grab. And then maybe as you're ready, you can hold at your ankles. Resist the urge to cup underneath the blade edges of the feet. That brings the toes up and creates what's called sickling in your ankle. And that side of your ankle is often where we are prone to roll. Like if you get an ankle injury, it tends to be because you rolled off the edge of a curve or something like that. So we don't want to invite that kind of movement on our ankle. So feel free to grab at the ankle or shins. And then just gently press your elbows into your thighs. See how that create some openness there for the hips. I also feel it on my inner thighs today. Even though you're rounding through the upper back, we're still not dropping back into the tailbone. We're still staying up and forward. I'm not going to hold here for too long because it's a lot more work than we want to do for too long. And we'll release. Use the hands on the shins as leverage as you open your chest to the ceiling. And we'll stack the spine back on top. We're gonna spend a little bit of time in our seated straddle. You're welcome, I know how excited you are. So again, I'm gonna turn so that my heels stay on my mat. You can sit however works best for you. You can keep that blanket underneath. There's no prize for how wide your V is, but you still, once again, want to think about not rocking backwards, but staying up on top. Hopefully your bolster or pillows are relatively close because you're probably going to want them in front of you. And then you can maybe start by resting elbows or maybe just hands pushing down. Getting hips, hamstrings, and inner thighs all at once. I love a multi-purpose stretch. For the longest time, I used to think my straddle stretch was about only my hips. But depending on your depth here, sometimes it has a lot more to do with hamstring. You're targeting all of those areas. You can do that lift and lower where you inhale the chest up and forward. And the exhale might drop you a little bit lower. You can even find a little bit of gentle movement through your feet, flexing the toes to the ceiling, then pointing the toes down or pointing that Barbie foot shape. That changes how the hamstrings feel with the different engagement of the foot. Because as we know, our back line of our body is connected. So minor movement through the feet might create some pretty major intensity shifts. Feeling free to surrender farther. The longer you hold, the more agreeable the body becomes to this particular posture sometimes. Imagining there's somebody a little bit in front of you, giving you a gentle tug to your hands. That also helps you feel the action of coming forward and down instead of back and folding. And you can walk yourself up gently. You can reach your left arm up and over. Your right hand can come in front on the leg or behind. And take a nice side body stretch. You feel the space coming from the top of the hip all the way through the ribs. Feel free to take that arm circle I often offer. We haven't focused much on the shoulders. A little bit of movement that might feel nice. And you can bring yourself up and tick-tock to your second side. If you took that arm circle, find it on this side as well. bringing yourself up. And then you can grab, I like to grab kind of on my inner thighs to bend my knees because they've gotten kind of stuck there. And then you can shake it out, legs extend. We're gonna set up for a little bit of supported lizard lunge here before we return to our backs. You can take this in a sort of more yin approach where you're pretty active, actively engaged through the arms, supporting yourself, but you can also create some cushion as you set up here. The transitions are not going to be pretty here, but that's okay. So as you're ready, you can maybe pass through table. If you need some hip sways or circles, feel free. And then I'm going to take my right leg forward first. It comes to the edge of my mat. I've already got my bolster in front of me. I'm going to cushion under my knee with my towel. And you want to feel this front knee hugging in to your shoulder. And you can stay up on your arm, on your hands. You can also, I'm using my bolster because it's soft, drop to elbows. You can drop to elbows all the way down on the mat. But for me, that's a lot of work for my body. So I'm going to stay here on my bolster. Depending on how your hips feel, you might feel this in a couple of places. Personally, I feel lizard lunge more on my hip flexor of my extended leg. If you're really hankering for a very active stretch, you could tuck your back toes and engage through the back leg. You might also feel this on the external rotator of the front knee. If you want, you could open your toes slightly out and roll on the blade edge of the foot. For me, that helps me target that external rotator. Just be very, very gentle and cognizant of your joints. This can put a lot of pressure on your knees and ankles. Wherever you're surrendering, resist the urge to drop the crown of the head down. That puts a lot of stress on the back of the neck. We've got about 4 more rounds of breath wherever you've settled. You take your final rounds of breath. Check in with the weight distribution. I tend to rock heavier on my, for this side, it would be my left arm, the opposite arm of mid leg. Ideally, we're pressing equally onto those elbows. Pressing the hands back up, they can even be on your bolster. If you took that blade edge, heel toe those toes back to center. And gently bend the back knee. And you might choose to shimmy that foot a little bit farther in. And let's get one more brief hamstring stretch. Taking some half splits. Using your hands on the floor or maybe a prop to bring it closer. Getting a little bit of stretch on the back of that leg. And then we'll start to switch it out. Stepping your right knee back. Maybe scooching that bolster a little bit to the right. You're welcome, of course, to cat-cow in between. As you bring your left foot forward, starting with that knee stacked over ankle and toes facing forward as you settle into the posture. Maybe you stay up on hands. Maybe you come down to the elbows. There's a lot of shoulder and forearm strength happening here if you're on your elbows. And maybe after a couple of breaths, you play with the toes out and the blade edge of the foot roll. Being sure you're breathing here. Never forget my first yin class I ever took. We held lizard lunge for 5 minutes on each side. And my arms were so tired at the end. We kept our elbows down and we had a block there. That taught me how yin class is still often very active. Similar to restorative. You're often working a little harder. We got about 4 more rounds of breath. And if you took the foot to the blade edge, you want to plant that foot back down. Bring yourself up to the hands. Easing yourself out. As we heel toe that foot a little more toward the center, or at least in line with your hip. As your hips shift back, taking that half split from your second side. Nice. And shifting, stepping that knee back. Maybe pausing briefly in a child's pose. A wide knee child's pose might feel really nice to your body. And as you're ready, you can bring yourself up and out. We're headed back onto our spine, making sure any props you might want for Shavasana are relatively handy, and grabbing for that strap, because we do have time to briefly revisit those stretches we took at the beginning of class, so we can notice the difference and the effects of our hips and hamstring practice on the body. So as you're ready, guide yourself down and hug your knees to the chest. Maybe you gently sway. Then you can plant both feet on the mat. Reach for your strap. We won't hold quite as long. We'll just get a feel for how each position might have shifted. Lassoing the bottom of your foot. I've got my right foot started here. Maybe the first thing you notice is that you would like to extend your leg this time. You might notice that it's a little bit easier testing the water, seeing what it feels like to pull that toe closer, and then maybe release to that quarter point. You might find that the movement is simply just a little bit easier for the body. We got about 2 more moving through here. And then we'll pause, foot stacked over the hip. Strap switches the same arm as extended leg. For me, that's the right. And we let it open to the side. Personally, I feel quite a bit of difference here. I don't know that it looks much different, but my body is more okay with this position. You might even notice that you now have a little more range of motion where you could bring your toe up and down. Or maybe you just pause and hold for a few more rounds of breath. Then you can guide the leg back up, swap, grip, and take the leg across the body. Taking that twist once more. Maybe your body lets the foot find the floor with the shoulder still on the mat. Maybe not. Now that I've stretched my hips, I definitely feel this more in my IT band than on my external rotators this time. Then you can bring that leg back center, release that foot, let it pause long. And we'll set up for the second side. Feeling free to start with both knees bent, 2 feet planted, lassoing your left foot, and then choosing to keep the right knee bent or stretching it long. Pause first over the hip, and then maybe play with pulling the foot closer and then letting it release to that quarter point. Feeling maybe a little deeper range of motion. Or maybe you choose a more static position of just holding and pulling the leg ever so slightly. Then the foot hovers over the hip. Strap switches to the left hand as you open the leg out to the left. Taking that external rotation once more. If you took a peek at your kneecap and big toe, maybe pointing kind of behind you almost. That's not really a good description. Maybe pointing toward the top of your mat. Maybe you test the range of motion here, lifting and lowering the leg a little. And taking our final one, leg passes through center, swapping the grip to the opposite hand. We take our twist. Foot might release down, you might keep it hovered. And you can gently transition back to center, release and lower the foot. Maybe wiggle it out, shake it out. Option always to windshield wiper the knees. As you begin to settle in for your Shavasana, maybe since we spent a lot of time on the hips, you might choose to take some reclined goddess. Option still to support under the thighs, or any other variation of Shavasana that your body prefers. So you settle and rest into the mat. Hopefully feeling some extra looseness for the lower half of the body, as well as the lumbar spine. As you settle and rest into your Shavasana, Let the breath go. Mostly quiet as it supports your restful state. Perhaps return to that notion of calmness and serenity, or reminding yourself to embrace vulnerability. Your mind drifts. Simply call it back. That sense of calmness. Allowing that to wash over the body. From the crown of the head to the tips of the toes. Allowing yourself to surrender into the comfort and support of your mat. And feeling free to continue settling and surrendering into serenity in your Shavasana. Or, if you're ready, you can deepen the breath, billowing through the chest and belly, then exhale, sighing it out as you begin to find movement in the fingers and toes, Maybe moving up to the wrists and ankles. Maybe you gently nod the head from side to side, massaging the base of the skull across the mat. Perhaps you bend the knees and plant the feet on the mat, gently inviting that windshield wiper sway as you increase depth of movement. And when you're ready, and if you so choose, you can pause to your favorite side, allowing your postures and practice to settle into the body. And gently pressing through the top hand as you guide yourself up to a comfortable seat. Eyes are closed or downcast. Feeling length through the spine, tailbone to crown of head. Inhale, arms reach high, palms meeting at the top. Exhale, hands pause at your third eye as you seek openness of mind. They rest at your lips so that you find honest words and they settle at your heart as you arrive at a happy heart. Thank you for allowing me to be your guide for your practice. Namaste. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of your Sunday.
You too.